Okay. What's that? If you just push start and then type Python, then it'll be a black screen. You can type into it. See what? Look at the screen. No, not there. In your start menu.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if I do.
So let's say we're given A and B, and we want to calculate C, right?
That is so you can type it as you run it.
That says, okay, give me the number for A, give me the number for B, and I'll give you back the numbers. That way we don't
Anyways.
over and over. Let's say we have like 500.
Okay, guys. Hey, Daniel, I need you to stay with me, okay? And not go off topic. So, can everybody see either the TV or the projector? Sweet. So, yesterday we started the topic of functions. I realized it's a little unclear and it was a lot to take in. But I want to go back over that because it is pretty important for programming. Okay? So, you come in, and to create a function, you have to define it. And the way you do that is you type DEF space. Okay? The space has to be there. And then you type in the name of your function. And the rules for naming your function are the same as naming your variables. They cannot start with a number, but they can have letters, numbers, and underscores in them. Alright? So I'm going to say, do something. Okay. I'm going to save this, and now I'm going to run our code here. Look at that. Did anything happen? No. Right. That's because we never actually ran this code. All we did was define this function which says, okay, when you run this function, this is what happens. Okay, but if I come up here and say, and then down here I say,
so what we're doing here, this is what we say calling functions. Okay?
Now the boop and the beep happen. And you'll see right there, and then right there. But if I say do something like that, what this code does is it runs this function. Okay? So I'm going to run the code. And look at that. 1,000 is 5 times 200. Okay. Does anybody have questions about this? Raise your hand if you understand it. Okay. Damon, is this making sense to you? Okay. What about you, Daniel? Awesome. That's what I like to hear.
Who thinks they can tell me what's going to be printed by this function? I got 2 things.
Alright, now we're going to change the function up a bit. And now we're going to put in an X right there. And we'll get rid of this line. Okay, now let's try and run the program. Oh, I got an error. Missing one required argument, X. What this means is that we don't have anything for this. This is a variable. In particular, this is an argument variable. What this means is that whenever you run this function, you have to provide a value for this variable. Okay? We don't have a value right here. So if I type 30, what do you guys think is going to show up on the screen?
Okay.
Show of hands.
What do you think?
Yes, Jamie? It might print 30? Okay. Seth?
It's going to do 30 times 200.
Uh-huh. Good. Any other ideas?
You guys all did an amazing job. I really, absolutely love it.
What do you think, Ben?
So why don't we just run this line out? You give it a shot here. What was that?
It will. 30 times 200.
Close. You're very close. It's going to go boop, 30 times 200, and it's going to say beep.
Alright.
Wait, no, boop, beep, then 30 times 200. My bad. Okay. So what happens is that this. Here, let me draw it here.
A, B, we did A and then B, 1, 2, C.
Okay.
So we ran A, and we skipped down to here. We ran B.
That right
And
there
we did this guy, which means we went up here
goes
to, and we came back down
to
here.
this
Okay, you guys all see that? So there are two things.
right there.
The functions. There's defining the function, which is like, imagine.
Okay. So whenever we run this function on this line, what value does x have?
You're just defining steps. So when you see this guy, it's right here.
Celeste?
So the value of
That
x
D
times
that
200.
stands for define. We're not actually running the line.
No. I'm asking what the value of x is.
That this function uses.
It's 30.
Now,
Was that what you were going to say, Jamie?
it's like the function.
And I need to give you
When you
tickets.
see the function call,
I needed my videos or something. Jamie?
Video games.
Now,
Is video, so
let's say
video games,
we did.
video games.
Maybe.
Yeah,
It's a possibility.
it is.
Huh?
Say we do something like this.
Oh, right. Theme day. I thought you were talking about afternoon activities. Yes, today is video game day. We'll get you your tickets for that later. Because they're special tickets. You did it? Awesome. Okay. So does everybody understand how that works?
But in here, we're actually giving the function.
Hey, Damon, can you tell me why we might use an argument?
Actually, just make our function just like the function. By giving an argument.
Let's start a little simpler. Why would we use a function?
So,
Why would we make that?
many arguments is
Jamie?
So you don't have to write down the
The important thing you have to remember, this is a tough thing.
bunch of things.
When you define, when you
A
give
bunch of things at once. You're on the right track. What were you going to say, Seth?
Like when somebody like writes something, it'll show.
Inside the function.
So like saying like a game, like you asked you for your name,
If I
you
try
write
to
it,
do
you would use a
this.
function to like show if it was an okay name or not, or something like that.
You could. Well, why wouldn't you just do that with regular code? Why would you use a function
What do
instead?
you guys expect that?
Simplifies it, like makes it smaller.
Makes it smaller? You guys are on the right track. Does anybody have any other guesses? Okay. Nope. So let's.
Because it holds things inside of it, so things act together.
It's a lot of things.
A little abstract, but I think I understand what you're saying. So
That's exactly what it
the
is.
reason we use functions is if you have code that you're going to need multiple times, you want to put that code in a function so that you don't have to write the same code over and over and over again. Because that can get really tedious really fast, and if you need to make changes to that code, you have to make the same changes as many times as you use that code. Does that make sense to everyone? Whereas if you make a function, you can make the change once, and it applies everywhere where that function is used. Now, I'm going to add another function, or variable. And this time I'm going to get rid of y. Okay. So, what do you think is going to happen when I run the program now? Jamie?
Probably won't. It probably won't. Since there's no. But what is one?
That is so good. That is so good, Jamie. You're exactly right. This program will not run like it is because there is no value for y. It's missing one argument for y. Okay? So we have to give it one. And if you look up here, they're separated by commas, just like our list. We're going to separate this by commas too. Okay. Now, what do you guys think is going to show up on the screen? 30 times 2.
It takes one argument, but 2 were given. So it's telling you, hey, look,
60.
you can't just say, I expect you
Okay.
to give me 2 things.
So,
What are you doing, Craig?
does everybody understand functions and arguments and how they relate to each other? Yeah. Do you understand why you would use functions? Raise your hand if you have questions about why you would use a function. Yes, Celeste?
Like, in what kind of situation,
Now, how do we get C? C.
what are like
Yeah, remember that we have,
used for in general?
So, some functions may
yeah.
tell you whether or not a string of text is a valid date or not. So if you type 14, 15, 2017, well, 14 and 15 both cannot be months, because how many months do we have in a year? 12. So your function could look at that string and say, okay, well, it's saying that the month has to be either 14 or 15. That can't be right. So this is a bad date. Does that make sense?
We have the square root.
Yeah. Or like our print function, it takes stuff that the arguments you give it and it outputs it on the screen. So that's a function. Append adds things to your list.
How do we get a squared plus b squared? Oh, that's easy. Let's just do this.
This function multiplies stuff. So it's just whatever you need a function to do, it can do. There's, yeah. Who said something?
So now, in order to get
You said something. What's up, Ben? Oh. Okay. Now there's one other thing that you guys need to learn about functions to start with. And that is return values. Okay.
Maybe just do the 3 values in that, and then it's like all one.
Okay.
There we go. So in order to square root function,
In the same way
if you ever curious about
that
how-
this becomes 60,
let's say you want to do
right? Because 30 and 2 are right there, and that becomes 60.
Alright, check this out.
This becomes whatever is after the return. So in this case, our return is 0.
Absolute value.
So all of this becomes 0 after the function runs.
You can try. I would avoid Python 2.
Okay? And something else about returning. Once you have return in your code and it runs, your function closes. So if I say return 0 and then
Keep going. Usually you'll find something like this.
this line of code will never be run, because whenever it hits this line,
Yes. And then
the function exits. Right?
tells me you can have that module, and then I can do this. Math, that's where.
Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the value that we're printing out. Okay. Or I can change it and say
Why is Val here?
bam bam bop. And I'm going to say the good old Wombo combo. Okay. Okay. So you see how I added this string to the output of this function. Okay. So does everybody understand how return statements work? Yep. Yes. So if your function does a calculation of any kind, that's what you would return, is the calculation.
This is the last kind of tough part.
So then you can do something with that calculation. So if you make a function that calculates the square root of something, then you would return the square root. Does that make sense? Cool. What was your question, Seth?
Same.
Oh. Jamie, did you have your head raised? Dylan, Damon, you guys good? For sure, C's? Okay. So, if you remember, we have if statements. So, if x times y is greater than 50, return bada bing.
Okay, see, nothing happened.
Okay.
Didn't actually do anything.
So,
And that's because I'm never printing.
are we going to see bim bam bop or bada bing?
What's happening here is you start at the top.
But I never think about it because yeah.
Thinking about it is a good first step.
I think it's gonna be because I'm thinking about it. If since x times y is 30 times 2, really, that's 60. If 60 is greater than 50, so I
think that deserves a ticket. There you
go.
Jenny, did you have your hand raised, or are you just stretching?
No, I was gonna say the thing about because I thought that said less than 50.
Oh, yeah. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. There we go. So, you guys see how we can use if statements to do control our return? Good.
So now here, let's say you're doing my math homework and my professor's asking me to do a bunch of diagonal times. Do it all in here. Just go like this.
Okay, I think that's good enough for now. What I suggest you guys do is add the blog post or the Tumblr blog that I set up for you guys on your bookmarks on your laptops, like the PyTops as well, because this morning I put up the links to that library I was telling you about that I made for you guys. So you guys are doing the bank, the market, and the jobs. You guys will want to be using that. And I also included sample code to show you how to use it. In the meantime, though, I want you guys to make a program that... No.
What?
Ask a user to type in their name, and then it tells the user if they are in the class. So, to get input from the keyboard, say
Got all answers right
Okay.
there. You just need to one function. We just need to rewrite all the square roots. Because every time that it reaches there, it's going to runs this code and says, okay, this is the function.
Okay. So input is a function that takes input from the keyboard. So you type in your whatever you want to type, and then you push enter, and then that is the return value, and it's stored in data, as you can see right here.
Okay, hey look, same thing.
So I want you guys to go ahead and make a program that gets input from the user, asking for their name, and then tells the user, or it returns true if the user is in our class, and returns false if they are not in our class. Okay? Keep in mind if you need to do, if they're equal to something, you have to use 2 equal signs, and that's very important.
Can we erase all this?
Yeah, I'll just leave it on the board for you guys.
Wait, how does it know your name?
What?
How does it know your name?
You type it in. So it says input, right?
There you go. So it's got it right. Alright, so function will break for
Okay. So
So data input your name.
yeah.
you guys want to try.
Damon and Daniel, I want you guys to keep working on those laptops. I'm going to work on your PyTops. Yeah.
Everyone else is starting their own project, or give it a shot after lunch.
Putting names
Close
in
down battle.
answers allowed.